The Nine Souls are a surprise, that's for certain. To be honest, I'm one of those people who have been waiting for Silk Song for ages, and someone who has loved the sort of a soft, colorful art style of Hollow Knight, but also really enjoyed the difficulty. And when someone recommended Nine Souls to me, I thought, that's rubbish. The Tao punk setting did not seem appealing to me, and the main character looked weird. Why is it a tiny cat fighting against robots? I did not like the idea. And then I played it. And I'm making this video when you can read the title, so you probably know that I absolutely fell in love with this game. But I don't want to talk about it as a whole. Today I would like to talk about one specific boss. Because when I was playing Nine Souls, I found out that there are boss fights that I either love so much that I just sink hours into them and I don't even feel frustrated by losing, or there are fights that feel frustrating throughout their entire duration, every second being an absolute pain. So I thought, hey, this is interesting. Why not talk about it a bit more? So, in this video, I'm going to talk about the final boss, or I assume it's final. I have not yet finished the game. So this will be spoilery, but also I don't know the ending yet, so do be respectful in the comments, please. The perfection behind the Eigong fight starts with the arena. Here we can see a fantastic blend between 2D and 3D. Most Metroidvanias do things a bit differently. When we, for example, take Hollow Knight into account, that is a game that very much loves to utilize the limits of a 2D arena to its advantages. We can see how there in the Pantheon, for example, there are spikes on certain sections of the arena, or you have to stay on just a few platforms in the air, or you have to climb platforms like in the fight against Radiance. But here, you have this massive round arena. It's not actually round, but it is effectively endless, or at least I have not managed to reach any sort of wall or obstacle. And I think that is something magical about this. You and Eigong fight each other in this environment that is free of all obstacles. You don't have to avoid anything but her. You don't have to focus on anything but her. She is the only thing you should be worried about, and that is great for a final boss because it really puts you into a perspective that you are up against this final boss. They don't need any fancy gimmicks, they just need their own skills. And I have to say, the artistic choice for blending 2D and 3D works so well. Just look how beautiful the arena is, how you sort of travel around it and it spins around. Very, very impressive visually. But the visual setting isn't the only thing that is beautiful about this fight, it is also the story setting. So beware, here the spoilers start. So at this part in the story, it's just Yi and Eigong on board New Kunlun. There might be some other people in hibernation, some other Solarians, but the humans are most likely already gone on the vessel, and therefore it's just these two giants fighting at the very top, or this very sort of center of the entire station. And to me, this is almost poetical. You feel alone. There are no allies anymore. There is no backup for neither of you. Eigong even mentions in her diaries that she is the only one who must save Solarians from their fate at the hands of the virus. So you are both completely alone, and that sort of puts you in the same perspective. It's a clash of two ideologies, two ways to treat this disaster, and two ways to approach the future of the Solarians. And I think that's beautiful. There's no army, there's no backup for any of you, just a simple duel. Now, to sort of get a little bit into the attacks and the actual mechanics of the fight, we can see some similarities between Eigong and Yi. We can see that they both use talisman. We can see that Eigong 2 is very nimble and likes to dodge, but their techniques are also a bit different. We can see that in a certain way they are a master and apprentice, but they did go their separate ways at some point in history. And I think this is really cool, this sort of familiarity and kind of getting to know what it's like to be on the receiving end of the talisman strike. It really makes the fight feel a bit more personal, so to speak. Now, when it comes to the other attacks that Eigong uses, I feel like I should address what I didn't like about some of the bosses. While most of the bosses are fun, some are a bit frustrating because they are assisted by mechanics that are outside of the normal dual spectrum, so to speak. This means that some of the bosses consist of multiple enemies. I believe this is Gomang, the one with the Jiangxi warriors, and the fact that they both attack simultaneously and independently make it feel less important, make it feel like a less of a choreographed fight and more of a annoying one, to be honest. But then we have multiple enemies in the sense of Lady Ethereal, and they essentially work as extensions of her, and they essentially perform attacks in coordination. It's a similar concept to the Mantis Lords in Hollow Knight. They also worked really well this way. Now, the thing that I like about Eigong is that I criticized this approach to boss fights. I hate the fact when there are multiple bosses or bosses that are essentially trying to be more about their numbers than the actual fight itself. When it comes to a final boss, I want a duel. I want to fight the main villain, and I want the fight to be memorable. No bullshit, no crazy amount of extra enemies coming to help. I just want a simple duel that is about perfecting the parries and fighting one-on-one where each mistake can cost you dearly. And the fight with Eigong is the perfection of that. She literally is the same fight in all three phases, just enhanced with a few extra attacks, and there are no extra enemies coming to help her. I've imagined there would be some extra summons or, some of the infected Solarians coming to help her, but no. It is literally what I desired from the other boss fights, but existing in the final boss. Now, let's get to the fight itself and why it is so good, because all of this was sort of just me talking around, so now let's get to the actual mechanics. First and foremost, Eigong has a few openings, and I feel like she is the polar opposite of Lady Ethereal. So, what is Lady Ethereal compared to Eigong? Lady Ethereal is a very typical Souls-like boss. She has powerful attacks that you need to parry and avoid, and eventually this creates an opening. Once you plant the talisman on her, she freaks out, is stunned, and you can deliver the most powerful talisman blast imaginable. So it is literally about her doing her own thing, and then you doing your thing when your turn comes. And that is a perfectly fine way to approach a boss fight. But with Eigong, it's different. Her openings are tiny, so the best way to actually defeat her is to just chip away at her health slowly. I'm not sure if you can even do some crazy big burst damage. And that makes it feel less of a turn-based fight, in a sense that you do your attacks and then I'll do mine, and more about a fight that is a literal duel, where it's dynamic, it flows, and you constantly have to stay on your toes to use those tiny windows to chip away at her health. And the fact that she actually has 3 phases and quite a lot of health makes this fight even more important for this approach, because in order to actually defeat her, you need to keep fighting her for a relatively long time. And that means plenty of room for errors that you need to iron out if you actually want to defeat her. Now, what about the attacks themselves? One thing that you'll probably quickly notice is that Eigong doesn't actually use any specific combos, but rather she interchanges her attacks from time to time. So you actually need to watch what she's doing and what she's telegraphing, rather than just thinking, oh yeah, this one is like 11 attacks in a row, and I have muscle memory to carry me through them. No, you actually have to watch what she's doing. A prime example of this are her stabs. She can stab twice, but she can also stab 3 times. Or, for example, if we take into account her talisman attack from the second phase. If you parry that, she may just teleport away and do some other attacks, or she may perform an uppercut followed by a heavy blow to the ground, one that's unblockable. Or she may actually perform 2 quick attacks in the air to hit you, and then a very delayed unblockable attack. So it's not just the fact that she always does the same, she interchanges the different parts of her combos, and you need to react accordingly. Now, I would argue that the first phase is there for learning the techniques, and this is something that is also quite brilliant. Sometimes in Nine Souls, I felt like I had no idea how to block certain attacks. It felt like what the enemy was doing was not communicated clearly, and I had to fail to the same attack over and over again until I figured out what the hell I was even supposed to do. And sometimes I still don't know how to do it. Honestly, some of the fights were just weird. But here, I feel like Eigong doesn't use anything that isn't obvious. Every single attack of her sword is well telegraphed, but it's still fast. You need to react on time. And honestly, the first phase isn't all that difficult, but it's there so that you sort of master the base core of her moveset. When the second phase comes around, she doesn't change too much, and that is important, I think. In many games, the characters change a bit too much, right? Even Lady Ethereal changes quite a lot because her copies actually attack a bit faster. But Eigong doesn't do that. She just adds more techniques to her repertoire of skills. And I think that's brilliant because really there are only 2 additions: the attacks after her talisman attack and the draw stance weird blade slashes that fly at you. So she doesn't add too much in her second phase, but it's enough to kill you because it's something new, it's a variety. And once again, you need to sort of master this part of the duel to move on. And the third phase is literally the same concept. The only thing that's new in the third phase are those dash attacks, and they are really dangerous and hard to block, but that's precisely it. It's just something hard to block that's added on top of what you already know. And I just think it's great. It's not a completely new phase with completely new attacks, it's just adding on top of it, like she's holding back less and less and less, and that is brilliant, in my opinion. And of course, another thing that I need to mention is the soundtrack, because rather than the soundtrack being different for each phase, which it still sort of is, it feels like it's growing stronger and more prominent the closer to the end you are. In the first phase, I would say the soundtrack is practically non-existent. It's nothing special, it's literally just you fighting, and as the fight goes on and there are higher and higher stakes, as you get closer to that goal, the music picks up and changes, and that just creates an even better atmosphere. Overall, I would say that the fight itself is a perfect combination of everything you have to create about a fight. The stakes in the story and the overall feelings that you go to the fight with are amazing, and then you add the absolutely stunning visuals and gorgeous music to just really create this immersive experience. But then the fight itself is fun too. The attacks are varied, not really simple to avoid, and the different phases really add up to one another, making the fight more and more difficult without changing its core, its principle. And to me, that is just brilliant. This fight is definitely incredibly enjoyable, and even if I lose, I don't feel as frustrated. Whereas in some fights, I just felt frustrated that I had to do them to begin with. So here, yeah, I have to say, This is a perfect final boss.